The Everyman podcast, the place where real men talk.
Good evening and welcome to the Everyman podcast, the podcast where the everyday men talk about some of the challenges that we all face on a day-to-day basis. Now, tonight we have a very special guest. We have James Lindsay, a brand new author, speaking about his own experience with psychosis and the challenges that he has overcome in his life and where he is today. So, boys, how are we feeling tonight with our very, very special guest, James, a brand new author?
Yeah, I'm buzzing. I think it's definitely something that all three of us here can relate with, what he's been through. And
Yeah.
I can't wait to pick his brain and see what he has to say.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Job get as close to the mic the whole rest of the night.
Oh, you like this? Yeah.
Yeah,
I was laughing at that as well because Job's playing hide and seek behind the mic.
It's the big
Yeah,
nose. I was wanting it to go away.
Yeah. Also, welcome back, Job. You've been away for a while. You've been
Thank you.
haven't you?
Yeah, just hectic. Baby, work, everything just completely hectic. So it's nice to be back, boys. It's nice to be back. But I think we've got an interesting guest this week. And I think there's a lot of questions that we can ask to help a lot of people.
I have a feeling you might have a lot of questions.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I've got a feeling
on that one.
Chris Job has got a lot of questions for this.
All right, okay. Yeah. Cool.
You've been saving them up for the weeks that you've not been here. I feel like for this episode, you might just take the first half of this episode and ask every single question.
Oh, right.
I think so.
Oh, it's the Chris Job experience, is it? Okay.
The Chris
Well,
Job experience.
welcome to the non-everyman. This is the Chris Job experience. You're on with me tonight, your host, Chris Job. Forget about the other two. They were ugly anyways. So it's fine. You're with me now. No, let's not do that. That would be the least listened to podcast on this earth. So let's stick to the Everyman.
Yeah.
I wonder how many words I'll get in this podcast, Lou. How many times do you reckon I'll speak this podcast? Do you reckon I'll speak more than two?
Are you going to do Dean tonight? Are you playing the role of Dean?
I'll play the role of Dean on mute all night.
You're going to play the... But I wish Dean would be on mute half the time. That's the thing. Because normally he's just doing this.
Wow.
He's touching his
normally
face,
just doing...
or his dog's coming in, or his wife's cooking kitchen in the food or something. There's always something going on.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Shall we bring James in? I think now seems like a great time to catch up with James. James, how are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing really good, thanks. Buzzing to be on your podcast. Thanks very much for having me.
No, we are super grateful to have you on. Do you mind just telling the guests a little bit about who you are and a little bit around some of the work that you've done before?
Yeah, sure. So I'm 32 and I live in Watford in Hertfordshire in a flat with my fiance. And for a day job, I'm in the marketing team at a mental health charity called Hertfordshire Mind Network. And outside of that, I try and do as much as I can, like sharing my lived experience of mental illness through like podcasts and blogs and things like that. And as you kindly mentioned, the book, which came out last week. Then I said last year.
It's been a long year.
It's been a long year. It's called Befriending My Brain. So it's something I'm trying to share just to help others because I used to be quite closed up about mental health and not talk about it. And I only started opening up because I started reading someone's book. So I'm hoping to kind of maybe do the same to someone else, if that makes sense.
No, I like that. Actually, I really like the title. I think it really sort of gives an impression of like you opening up, especially, which I'm sure we'll talk more about the book in a second. But I do think it does actually sort of give a good experience of what's to come within the book as well. So
yeah, thank you.
I think it'll be interesting to hear the story a bit more. James, if you don't mind us asking, with your personal experience, I know the book probably explains a lot of that, but I know a lot of us on the podcast have had problems with mental health and depression and stuff like that. But I know yours is slightly different. You don't mind explaining exactly how you came to writing the book, sort of what led up to that, and your experiences through life that sort of led you towards writing the book?
Yeah, of course. I'll try and cover it all and not go off topic, but I'll try and start with,
Yeah.
So I had anxiety like kind of as a teenager and young adult, and then I was in my mid-20s. This was 2016, and a relationship breakup resulted. That was like the kind of catalyst that kind of triggered it, and I had a psychotic episode. So psychosis, which resulted in being sectioned and having to spend 4 weeks on a psychiatric ward, which was very difficult and traumatic, but it was necessary at the time because I was very, very unwell. And it wasn't just the 4 weeks kind of living in a ward that was hard. It was like the aftermath of that was hard, and it took a long time for me to kind of find my voice. But I eventually did in 2018 when I kind of started reading other people's stories, which led to me doing blogging, and I got some really, really nice feedback from doing that, and I kind of gained the writing bug. And then the blogging was where I discovered another blogger being a published author, and then I kind of looked up. The publisher was like a specialist mental health publisher, and that was like the eureka moment, I guess, where I kind of thought, oh, I've got enough material and experience to kind of start a book. So yeah, I started writing it in 2018, and I finished. I sent off the last version of it kind of middle of last year, 22. So
Wow.
it was like an on and off project. Like I didn't have any sort of deadline and pressure or anything. So I wasn't like continuously writing for 4 years. I'd sort of dip in and out. But yeah, it's nice to have it out at last.
I think.
Go on, Joe.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say, I think, especially as well with that type of thing, with the experiences you've probably had as well, writing the book probably. I don't know about you, but I have like what I call a personal diary that I write for, like, when I feel certain ways or when I can remember certain things that have happened that have triggered us with my mental health and anxiety. And I know reading back sometimes on those things, it can kind of reset my mind to think like how far I've come, but also bring back memories of what had happened. And I imagine writing the book, taking that amount of time probably was good as well, in the fact of, not putting too much pressure on yourself, or potentially sort of, reading things that may potentially have sort of been sensitive for yourself in the future. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I know myself personally, like I said, especially going through experiences where in the past I've wanted to take my own life and stuff like that. If I've read back on that or something like that, it shows us how far I've came, but it also at the same time has that air of, a caution of, oh, I remember being in that position, and putting that from, your mind to pen must also be quite hard to do, if you don't mind us asking.
No, of course, it's a kind of mixed thing in terms of like I find the writing very therapeutic because especially like I think in general, if you're very anxious or worried about something, if you write something down, it almost like normalizes it and transfers the feeling literally from your head to the paper or the Word document or however you're writing it. But it was quite hard actually, like because I was writing about being sectioned and stuff. Like it was hard to kind of search back into those really traumatic times in my past and kind of extract information, but it helped me process it and come to terms with it, definitely. But there were some days where I'd sort of write for half an hour and then I'd feel like really like drained and like my head was fuzzy and I had to just kind of stop doing it and just watch a happy TV show or something. Like,
I get that.
Yeah, and say like that's it for today. I need to, that's enough, and then start again another time.
Yeah. No, that's really. I think that's really important that through recovery, it's not to stay within that mindset. So I've had counselling for certain things in the past, and whilst counselling is like super effective, I got loads out of it, and I suppose this podcast is also an element of of therapy for me. I know Ethan's talked about that himself, that the ability to talk and open up about our feelings. I also find it can be quite dangerous, as you say, to stay in that mentality and not have that time to step away from those dark feelings, because I think it can almost suck you back in. There is one thing I wanted to ask James, actually. So you mentioned that when you had your sort of your bigger episode, you were in your mid-20s. Now, is mental health something you struggled with growing up as a youngster, as a teenager, or do you think you didn't really identify what it was?
Yeah, so I was very anxious teenager, like at secondary school. I took like what everyone said very seriously, and like I was very like an overthinker, and like I'd go as far as going to reception and like asking to get my parents to pick me up, and like I'd fake like a panic attack or something because I was just so anxious about school. And back then there wasn't really any discussion around mental health, and I didn't even know what I had was anxiety. And then like I remember being in my early 20s and someone suggesting I had it, and like I was almost kind of offended and like wanted to kind of like oh no, I don't have that, like I'm just, and I when I got ill, like that was like I didn't really have any awareness around mental illness at all. Like it was only kind of in my recovery that I really kind of opened my mind to it. So it was, yeah, I'm very different now compared to like before the first episode, I'd say.
James, just touching on that as well, mate. Obviously, I appreciate you sharing. Obviously, that's something major, and obviously it's quite private as well. So I appreciate you sharing that. Looking back to when you were younger, and obviously you said you've learned more now as opposed to before what happened. Did you ever sort of try and explore those feelings or speak to family members or friends or anything like that at the time, or is it more something that you're doing now? Because I mean, speaking from personal experience, I've mentioned on the podcast previously, I've struggled a lot with my mental health, and my weight is a big factor of that, and it's affected relationships. But I was lucky enough to have sort of a mother who was always there and would always be like a rock, and she would try and work the issues out with me. And I was just wanting to see if that was something you would try with people when you were younger, or if not when you were younger, since obviously what's happened. Do you talk a lot, or how do you get through it, sort of, or besides writing it down?
Yeah, so I was lucky growing up. I had a really good support network. Like my mum and dad, I felt like I could talk to them about anything, and I did like kind of share when I was struggling. So it was good. And mum always kind of instilled in me the whole philosophy of like problem shared is problem halved. And it's very simple, but it's very effective and true, like to this day. And I think I was lucky, like in terms of the friends I made in sixth form and at university. I got along with them so well, like and I felt like I could speak to them about really anything. So I felt kind of blessed to meet those people and have a group of friends where like you can have a laugh together and you can take the mick out of each other, but also chat about anything. So like, and I think we're better at it now as well. Like since I like started doing blogs and stuff, like I've had a mate sort of say to me, like when we were like in the car, just the two of us, like, oh, your blog was really good. And then he'd opened up to me about his like counselling and stuff, which like I had no idea he was doing. So yeah, it's amazing like what it leads to and like how the conversations kind of open up themselves. It's like been really helpful.
Yeah, I just from my own personal experience, I think the hardest thing is to talk, but because it's taking it from your own mind to out of your own mind, and it almost feels like I remember when I first spoke about some of the things that I've struggled with in my life, and it's gone from in your head where you process it and you think, no, I'm okay, I'm going to be all right, like there's nothing actually a matter. It's just a little bit of stress or a little bit of anxiety or whatever that might be. And that's how my head was processing it. But then you speak to other people, and it's not necessarily just how good it made me feel. It's actually then encouraging my friends to open up and speak about their own experiences too. And I've got so much out of that as a person, speaking to Job, Ethan, and the other guys involved in the podcast, to be able to say, one, it's giving me a lot of healing speaking up, but actually, as you've said, you've opened up on your situation, and the power of you being honest and open about your feelings has then encouraged your own friend actually to speak up too. And if we can deliver any message in the podcast, I think that would be it. Just speak up, talk, because you might not think that your stress or struggles are that bad, depending on where you're at with it. But your friend might be struggling, and I think that's a really key message that we really need to make clear.
Yeah, definitely.
I totally agree. And if you don't mind us asking, actually, James, as well, I have a question in regards to when you were sectioned. Was that voluntary, or was that something where you were sort of led into it? And what sort of was the key turning point of either yourself, saying, "Look, I need to do something about this," or, for example, someone stepping in and saying, "Look,
Like
something
an
needs to be done
intervention.
about that." Yeah, because I've known when I was at my lowest, it took my partner to actually recognize before I recognized, if that made sense. And I feel like it's such a big thing that, like, kind of like Lewis just said there, a lot of people just play it off as, I'll just forget about it. I'll not sort of face it head on, if that makes sense. And I don't know if it's statistically true. I would have to search it up. But I feel like when caught early, mental health can be dealt with a lot better than when it's bottled up and bottled up and bottled up, to the point of where, for me personally, I had a blowout, which obviously could have been intervened earlier. So if you don't mind opening up, and if you don't, it's absolutely fine. I don't want to overstep the line or anything, but it would be great to understand, was it something that you recognized yourself, or was that something where it was an intervention what kind of took you to realize how far it had got?
Yeah,
If you don't mind.
it was definitely an intervention. So like I'd broken up with my ex-partner and I was living with parents again, and it was my mum who's been a rock the whole time, like, who spotted that I wasn't well, and I was completely in denial. Like, I thought there was nothing wrong with me whatsoever, and she insisted I went to the GP, and then the GP saw me, and there was a bit of a wait to be seen by the mental health team, which was frustrating, because I was like in a state of crisis, and we had to, like, well, my mum and dad had to sort of contain me, and it was within those 2 weeks, like, wait, where I was they had to call an ambulance because my, like, behavior was, like, so concerning, and the ambulance took me to the hospital, and then they assessed me there, and then I was sectioned there, so they took me to the ward. So it was not it wasn't voluntary. It was like a necessity, really, because I was all over the place, and had to be the intervention that had to happen, and it's absolutely true what you say about the early intervention the better, and that's very true with psychosis. Is the earlier the treatment, the less, I don't know how to articulate it, but like the shorter the recovery.
I see
Maybe,
what you're saying. The chances
maybe not the
of coming back
shorter the
from it.
recovery, but like you can come back from it. There's more chance of coming back from it if you're seeing earlier.
So a little bit on the psychosis side of things, I know, especially this day and age, mental health is becoming more and more talked about. So it's if I was to have a family member or a friend, they could recognize the signs early of anxiety or depression, because it is very talked about. I mean, it still probably needs more conversation, which is kind of why we wanted to start this podcast. But what sort of early signs or triggers would you say were the symptoms that you were experiencing? And what would you say, just in case there's any listeners out there who maybe, like yourself, you said you didn't really think there was anything wrong, or in denial, let's say, in terms of the words you used. If someone was out there in a similar position, what would be the telltale signs of maybe that they are experiencing this, or maybe that they do need to look towards early intervention themselves, because like you've just said there, getting that early intervention could be the difference of recovery versus non-recovery. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So talking very fast, not making much sense, and like jumping from one subject to the other. And also you can get like delusions and hallucinations, which are like kind of in your mind that you believe, but which actually in reality aren't real.
Yeah.
So like
That sounds
I
so
thought I was
scary.
getting, oh yeah, it's yeah, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy is what I always say,
Yeah.
because it's like terrifying. But
Yeah.
I thought I was getting messages from TV and the radio and internet.
Right.
And some people, like another thing I had was I thought I was getting messages from the weather as well, as bizarre as that sounds. But
No, it's not
some
bizarre.
people,
I get that.
yeah, I've heard others like who've been in psychosis and maybe they're a bit religious. They think like God's talking to them,
Yeah.
and like thinking you can read other people's minds. It's one of those things that's quite unique to the person, even though there's kind of more like similar or maybe more common things you can look out for. Like it's no two episodes of psychosis are the same.
Oh.
It affects, I believe it affects 1 in 100 people, but
Wow.
what I find with it is that even though that is like 1%, it's like a small amount. It has anyone can suffer from it. Like you just need to be sleep deprived. So
Oh, really?
I think,
Do you say
sleep
sleep deprived? Sleep
Yeah.
deprived.
yeah, so that's like what did it for me. But I think it can also be induced by like drugs as well. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
one of those things. Sorry.
I've definitely heard of that. No, apologies, I did speak over you slightly there. I have heard of psychosis as in like psychedelic drugs. I think that's about as
Yeah.
confident as I could be talking about it, I've never heard it described how you've just described it there, as in you aren't on any external substance, but your brain and the chemicals in your brain due to lack of sleep are essentially tricking your. Is that your consciousness? Is that your just your general? Like, are you physically seeing things? Are you
Yeah.
actually hearing things, or it's the brain just tricking your conscious
Yeah,
part of your brain? Is that generally what it is?
it can be. Yeah, so you can actually see things which aren't there, and you can hear things which don't exist.
Wow.
And it's because like I think when you sleep, the brain repairs itself. So when you haven't been doing that for consecutive nights, you've got a broken brain which isn't functioning. The chemicals must be like all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that, actually, because I was watching TikTok the other day, and there was actually a lady who I believe must have been going through the same. She'd just been sectioned, but she had birds that were following her. She thought like every bird that you're seeing in the streets and everything were like going to attack her, basically. And she ended up getting sectioned herself personally. And I thought it was quite an interesting. She filmed it on TikTok of what was happening and how it was going, and it really just made me think of how powerful the mind is.
Yeah.
Because everyone thinks of weight and looking after yourself healthy and eating the right stuff and all of this exercise, and obviously that is needed, and obviously that's part of what will keep you healthy, but the mind is just as powerful, especially for myself. I know my personal experience, a lot of my anxiety is due to like health worries. Like I convince myself that I've got like extreme health conditions, and I will essentially start feeling physical pains. So one of my attacks will be like I'll start getting like tingles down the left side of my face and shooting pains down my arm, which is essentially what you get with a heart attack or a stroke or something like that. But I physically feel the pain, and I've spoke to a doctor about this, and obviously it is genuinely just the mind recreating that pain, and the belief of feeling that pain gives the physical sensation, which I found was insane. Because when I first experienced it, I was only young. I was about 16, and I remember the first time that my face going numb and the shooting pains. And as you can appreciate, not knowing anything about anxiety, back then it wasn't sort of heavily spoke about. I'm panicking. I run straight up to my mum's room, and I genuinely thought I was having a heart attack, especially being a bigger lad. You know what I mean? So I ended up going to hospital, having an ECG and stuff, to someone turning around and just saying, "Oh, you've just had a panic attack." But I'm sat there like, I don't feel like I've just had a panic attack. I feel like I've just had a heart attack. And I think that is the very first time I've experienced, and what hit hard with what you've just said there is about the power of the brain being able to sort of give physical sensations, physical things that you can see around you, like
sensations, interpretations.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't speak about, and probably should also be more aware of, which leads us into the next question I actually wanted to ask you, James, which was just to talk a bit more about your actual book itself. If you don't mind sort of explaining what it's about in more detail, if that's all right, and also sort of what the goal is for
The why
you wrote it.
Why you wrote the book.
Yeah.
Cool. Sure. So so at its core, it's a memoir. So it's a story. It's kind of like, it covers briefly my upbringing, but mainly it goes straight into the first psychosis I had, and like the ups and downs of recovering from that. And then I also had a relapse in 2019, so it covers that. So it's a very kind of up and down roller coaster story, but it's not just that story. I kind of describe it as a self-help book as well, because it's got like lots of extras in it. So it's got like chats with my my mum, my fiance, and my one of my best friends. It's got like some of my actual doctor's notes in it. It's got a lot of recommendations, like from me, in the form of lists. So it's got like recommended podcasts, actually, music, social media handles to follow.
James, I do just have to say that you wrote the book before our podcast was made, so that's why we didn't make the book. All right.
It was funny because there was like a cutoff point as well with the publisher, where like so it'd be finished, it'd be done, and then I'd discover something. I'd be like, can I just add one more thing to this list, like one more song or one more podcast? And it was quite hard.
Are you sure it's not too late? Are you sure it's not too late?
What's the name?
The ebook. So the point of it is to help people, like, because it was a game changer for me when I read my first like mental illness memoir that made me open up. And like the publisher I'm with calls it like bibliotherapy, which I think is quite a cool word. It's like the idea where you're kind of, it's like a self-therapy where you're reading and you're making yourself feel better. It's the main aim of it is to help people, like to raise awareness and reduce stigma, and like help people avoid things like psychosis, but also for people that it's already happened to them, to kind of give them hope that the recovery is always possible. I hope it does fulfill those things.
I'm sure it will, just from speaking to you. I mean, I don't want to say
incredible.
that I don't want to say that you're my therapist now, but this has been an amazing chat. Like, just to have that moment with you, to see, like, it's nice always to see that you're not alone as well in terms of mental health, especially. It makes you. I don't want to say I don't feel normal, but a lot of the time something I always used to say to myself is, why aren't I normal? Do you know what I mean? And it's nice to see that, it's not all just Instagram and Facebook where everyone's having amazing times all the time, and you're sitting there thinking, well, why am I sitting here having episodes and attacks and all that kind of other stuff. So it is actually really nice to be able to sort of see that other people go through it. And I think a lot of people will benefit from your book, especially being able to read about the experiences and being able to relate. I think that's something that is priceless. It's something that you can't take for granted. So I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to be able to speak about it as well with you today, because it's amazing.
Thank you.
As far as Ethan, I know you've had a lot of experiences through your life, and like you said, a lot of friends and stuff like that who've went through a lot yourself. It would be great to see your opinions on the topic as well, Ethan, because I know you've got a lot of share on this. And I think the listeners would actually benefit from a lot of your story as well. And it would be great for James to be able to hear a bit more about that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, I totally agree with what James is saying. I've been listening the whole way through, and something I've learned from a book I read not long ago, The Chimp Paradox, which I'm probably going to butcher here, but a lot of your thoughts are stored at the front of your brain. I'm just going to dumb it down for everyone. And it's a lot of it.
You're doing a great job, mate. You're doing a great job.
And by writing these thoughts down, you're pretty much taking the pressure off the front of your brain so it doesn't explode. Something along those lines. That's me butchering it. But no, the fact that you wrote it down, and obviously, as Joby mentioned, by you sharing your experience and putting down, obviously, I know you've shared Dr. Notes, you mentioned it as well, which is quite private. If one thing out of that book, similar to this podcast, if one thing can help one person, you've done a fantastic job, an amazing job. And if all else, you've done something amazing for yourself, because you've took the pressure off yourself moving forward. Personally, my struggles are different in the aspect of weight. Weight's a big issue for me, and I've never sort of diaried or journaled things down. I've spoken to people similar to yourself and Joby and Lewis through BetterHelp, which is an app, like an organisation. They offer like therapy sessions, and it's not like the NHS where you're on a massive waiting list. You're just speaking to regular people who are qualified, and you can share a lot with them. I have tried the NHS route, which I would always encourage people to speak to their doctors and go down that avenue. I've tried pills, I've tried medication. For me, medication didn't really work, because obviously it goes back to altering the chemicals in your brain, and there's an imbalance, and the medications are meant to try and balance it forcefully. And I think that just blunts sort of the objects and the tools you've got to your disposal. So, like you say, talking, whether that's to friends, to family, I've got a fantastic, like I mentioned, my mum was great. We've not always seen eye to eye, but she's an absolute rock. I'm lucky enough to have this podcast, I can speak to these lads and obviously guests like yourself, James. But also I've got an amazing support network, my friends Rob, Ryan, Matty, all those sort of people, Lewis, people like that who aren't afraid to have difficult conversations. And yeah, we take the piss out of each other. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You know what I mean? And my pal Richie,
I feel like that's part of it. That's part of it.
Oh no, yeah, definitely. Like, and he seeks solace in that, because like one of our best pals, Richie, his first thing, if we have a bit of a tiff, is to call us fat. And I don't mind that, because it's a joke, and the way he says it's funny. He'll make funny comments of it, and I'd rather that than someone be derogatory and call us like a fat bastard or something. That's so there's a lot going round, and you've got to give what you can take. But hats off to you, James, because it is a real sort of. I couldn't do what you've done. I couldn't write it down, and I couldn't share those experiences. I'm doing it via the podcast, but the completely kettle of fish. I mean, James, just what I've got you. I know I've not really got a word in Edgeway, thanks to Joby being back. But
oh, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks.
I felt exactly the same, Ethan.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just sit down. Don't worry, I'll just sit back.
Thanks, pal. But Chris, Chris, I'll you take a backseat. James,
no worry.
Just for us as well. You were saying you read a lot. Obviously, when you obviously that sort of flick the switch, and you were reading books. And what if you don't mind sharing, can you give us or any of our listeners or watchers any sort of books you've read? I know I've mentioned The Chimp Paradox is something I've read. Anything that you would recommend to our listeners or that helped you?
Yeah, so the game changer I mentioned earlier, It's called Let Me Be Frank by Frank Bruno. He used to be a boxer, and he's been
I know.
had a lot of mental illness struggles after his boxing career was over. So that was a really eye-opening read for me, very, very relatable, and that was really good. I've also read a few books from an author called Matt Haig. One of his most famous book is called Reasons to Stay Alive, and it's kind of like memoir style book, but like because he almost he tried to take his own life, and it's like him kind of recovering from that, and it's a really incredible book. And again, like it kind of was one of my inspirations to try and be an author. There's one by Bryony Gordon called Mad Girl. I think it's by, yeah, I'm trying to remember correctly. I'm pretty sure she has bipolar disorder. And it's like her like kind of learning how to deal with that. I guess those three are like ones that come to my head first, but I guess they were also some of my early ones, which kind of gave me so much comfort and made me feel less alone. And just, yeah, they're really good books to read. So I'd recommend them.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. I appreciate that. And like finding solace in not only writing your thoughts down, but sort of also learning from other people. Like you've mentioned there, you've got sort of people like everyday people like ourselves, which is who we are trying to help. But you've also got the elite of the elite. You know, Frank obviously doing his book and the struggles he went through. You know, obviously Tyson Fury was someone as well recently who went through it all. So, you know, I mean, there's such a wide audience. It does show that mental health is not just for the everyman. You know, it is literally everybody.
Yeah,
and
you're
then
right.
just sort of breaking down barriers is what we're here to do. So I appreciate that, James. Thank you. I'll let Joby go back to his
All right,
interrogating
am I
as
back?
well.
I'm out of jail, am I? I'm out of jail.
Joe, but yeah,
Oh,
you're going
dear.
back into jail because I have some questions.
I would love to hear your questions, Lou.
Yeah, sorry. James, so with regards to your book, right? So what would you say if you, this is absolutely putting you on the spot here. If you had to say what is the real underlying message of your book, what would you say it is? Like what if you had to say it in one sentence roughly, what you, if someone reads it, they go, I'm going to read that book and get what?
The first thing that came to my head is something which is literally, it's on the back of the book, you know, when you get like a kind of overview, and it says, I'm trying to remember which way around it is. I think it's like, yeah, recovery is always possible and hope is never far away. So it's taken from the book. And
Yeah, that's
I think
so
that's
powerful.
kind of sums it up quite well, because it teaches people who are still recovering that, you know, hopefully after reading it, they'll think, oh, I've got this, and have some motivation. And yeah, it's hard when you have an illness like psychosis, because it kind of really derails you, and like it almost makes you believe that you're not going to recover, and it gives you like low confidence, low self-esteem. So it's like kind of trying to give people that, you know, message, like the sort of hope and inspiration, essentially.
Yeah. James, I have to be honest, that is a incredible message. And for anyone out there, if there's one mantra to live your life by, if you are struggling and to cling on to, I definitely think it's what you just said. So thank you for that. James, I suppose, whilst it's been super insightful to understand the lead up to the book, I think what people would also love to hear is what's happened almost post the book, and where you're at today, and how you live your life today, potentially with the illness that you have, or have you overcome it? Is it something that you have to manage on a daily basis? What does everyday life look like for you now, and how has it affected where you are today?
Yeah, so I take medication still, which to me is a lifeline. So I take an antipsychotic every evening, which does wonders for me because it slows my brain down and it stops me having racing thoughts and intrusive thoughts like before bed. So without the medication, I would really struggle to sleep. So it kind of regulates my sleep as well. It's probably like I don't know, fourth or fifth type of medication of its kind which I've tried where it's been the right formula, but before that, like it wasn't. It was like too sedating, and I had to keep trying new things. So yeah, that kind of allows me to like live the life I live. So yeah, I work full time, and that's really really good because I guess like when I was ill, I part of me thought like, am I ever going to get that back again, like the job and stuff? And but I'm having a good year. I'm getting married in October this year, so that's something I'm
Congratulations.
really excited
Congratulations.
about.
Congratulations. We'll expect the invite
so
to the
yeah,
post, mate.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's like the kind of it's been it's a good year for me in terms of getting the book out and then ending the year with the wedding and stuff. So yeah, I try and be really kind of grateful for what I've got, but also I've had the lessons with the relapse, like to not take being healthy for granted and like to try and keep learning and keep like being open minded because I don't want to fall into the trap of thinking, oh, I'm better now. Like I just because I'm still vulnerable to getting ill again, as is everyone. So it's like just trying to stay well and trying to stay happy.
I think what was once said to me actually was a lot of mental health in general, you learn to live with it rather than sort of get away from it. So instead of trying to cure it, you have to learn to be able to manage and live with it day to day because it's not just something that you can flick a switch and turn off, but it is certainly something that if you look after it in the right way and you look after your mind and you keep, like you said, whether it's medication, whether it's talking therapies, whether it's coping mechanisms, being able to take that and put it into your day-to-day life is kind of how a lot of people find the end goal. I think one thing that a lot of people think is, well, when am I going to get better? Do you know what I mean? And I don't think it's as easy as just, oh, all of a sudden I'm better. It's finding the mechanisms, like you said, finding the books, finding the inspirational quotes, finding the things that work for you. Is it the therapy of writing? Is it the therapy of, for me, music? And I think go live.
What I think about that actually, it's like many things in life. Like, for example, if we look at it like success, for example, any success, and I'm going to sound so cheesy here, so any comments of calling me a what's it or whatever, like I'm not taking it. So just like any success or achieving anything, especially with your mental health, it's not about the destination. You don't get to a point of I am cured. You have to constantly think I'm on this journey, and every day is another step in that journey. And once you, this is only me speaking from my experience. I am certainly not a medical professional. Ethan, can you just confirm for the guests I'm not a medical professional and a marine biologist as well, just for clarification?
I can confirm that Lewis is not a marine biologist, he's not a medical professional, and he no longer plays for Plymouth Argyle Football Club. There's a three.
Thank you. Just in case anyone had forgotten that. I have definitely lost my trail of thought there. So with that in mind, it's more about accepting. So for me, I'm in a place now where I accept I have things that I have to deal with day to day. And it's not about me thinking by the 7th of March or the 10th of July or whatever, I'm going to finish the end goal. Because like you said, James, you can't ever let your brain think I am cured. I can walk away from this. I can stop the medication. I can stop talking openly and honestly with my friends, family, loved ones. And I can just move on with my life as if this never happened. This is now a part of you. This is who you are. It's your DNA. It's your makeup. It's your personality. It's your persona. It's all those sorts of things. And I think part of as Job alluded to there, living your life with it is that acceptance that your life is probably always going to involve an element of this. It's just how you nurture, develop it, support it in the best way to still have that balance of being healthy and managing some of the things going on in your head.
I
Yeah,
suppose.
definitely.
Sorry, James. No, you go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, yeah, James, you go ahead.
I know. I was just going to say, I think because I used to, like, when I first got ill, I thought I was going to recover from it like you recover from the flu, like I was going to be
Yeah.
rid of it.
Yeah.
And it it took me a long time to kind of accept the fact that it's part of me. And I used to think it was the enemy, and that's kind of where the title of the book came up, because it's like I had to just embrace it and befriend it. And at one point, I just stopped. I just started thinking, well, there's no point in trying to fight it and like trying to resist it. I might as well just accept it as part of me and make the most of it. And I feel lucky because I'm able to manage it with medication, and like, but I've met others, like there was other people who were on the ward who are like far more like unwell than I was, and I kind of, I know I've got like a group I play football with, which is like a mental health football group, and it's like a once a week thing. And there's guys from that group who are like either currently struggling or have done, and I feel like have been through worse than I have, and I feel lucky that I can live my life, and I make the small adjustment of taking the medication, and it's like, I could be a lot worse. I'm just really grateful.
I think a lot of what you have experienced, though, you now are sharing to help others. So it's not just you that's lucky; it's other people that's lucky that people like yourself are willing to speak about it. Because,
Yeah, I
like you
agree.
said, if there's people in worse positions than yourself, like you said, which there's always going to be someone out there who's experiencing it worse than yourself. If there's people like yourself that can speak about it, maybe that will help them learn to
definitely
cope with
will.
it more, for sure.
Yeah.
And that leads on to my actual final question for you, James, which would be, what is your advice to others who are struggling with mental health? Do you have any, like, I know we touched a little bit earlier with what Ethan asked about, well, is there any books that you would like to mention or anything like that? But if you were to sort of, let's say your friend comes up to you who's never said anything in regards to like mental health, you weren't understanding that they were struggling, and they said, you know what, James, I'm really struggling. What advice would you give us?
Yeah, I feel there's a lot of routes I could go down, like a lot of different things I can say. But yeah, I feel like when you're going through something, and if you keep it to yourself, like it might get a bit worse, a bit better, but it'll probably just stay the same. But whereas if you kind of seek help, I feel like that's the route where it will get better. So I guess it's like kind of having an open mind, and like kind of, it depends what it is, obviously, like kind of doing some research and getting some professional advice. And I guess trying to also learn like what keeps you well, like things like, for me, like exercise keeps me well, and eating healthy, and like not drinking too much alcohol. And I do like yoga and meditation as much as possible. Yeah, and it depends on the person as well, like, because something that works for me won't work for everyone. So yeah, it's like kind of finding your
I do
formula.
think it's interesting what you've just said, though, because all of us feel better when our diet's cleaner. All of us feel better when we exercise. All of us feel better when we don't drink alcohol. Yet society, and it's probably like we've talked on the podcast around work-life balance. So work-life balance, because we're all so focused on, and the things like cost of living and whatever, we've got to work as hard as we can so we can afford to provide for our families, our home, all that sort of stuff. So then we don't have the time to exercise maybe as much, and then we don't have the time to prepare our meals correctly. And then it comes to a weekend and we're so stressed, and our brains are just in like knots of we're just so full, and we look for that release. And instead of looking for a healthy release, just in society, most people are going, well, actually, you know what? I'm just going to blow off a load of steam. I'm going to drink a load of alcohol, and that's going to be me. And then I'm going to roll back into Monday and do it all over again. So where you're saying potentially it doesn't, there's not a one size fits all for everyone, and I do agree with that. So certain situations, maybe that isn't the answer for people, but I think having that solid base of doing the things that we know make most people happy, exercising, healthier diet, cutting out alcohol. If you're doing drugs, get off the drugs. If you're in debt, start trying to pay your debt off. If you're gambling, stop gambling. If you're doing whatever bad habit that doesn't make you happy and doesn't bring good things out of your life, then I'd address that you have a problem and try and stop it, and really simplify your life. I feel like a common theme through the conversations we've had, and we certainly haven't touched upon everything, there seems to be that solid base of those few things can make a hugely profound difference in someone's life, and take them from maybe being at that really, really high point of pain, anxiety, stress, and their mental illness maybe being at its peak, to something that's maybe a little bit more manageable and controllable, to go about their everyday life and live a more fulfilled life. And it's really positive to hear that that's what you do day to day life. And especially like the football, for example. We've spoke about this on the podcast. We started a football team. Job was actually our first manager. He was horrendous, but he was our
highest
first
win
manager.
percentage. Highest win percentage I'll have here.
He was our first manager, and I think that's really important, because sport, exercise, especially if you do it in a team, and it's incredible that you're in a team that has that sort of purpose, allows people to socialize some of the things that they are maybe struggling with, and get help without necessarily having to open up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ethan, I think you had a point there. You looked like you were about to jump in.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the endorphin side of things is massive for me. So, myself and Lou had a chat with one of his friends earlier who's an Olympian, and we were just saying the benefits, of going out and doing sports, whether that's football, whether that's going to the gym, weightlifting, whether that's going on a cycle, or even going for a coffee and a walk, which is like hidden exercise. So me and one of my good friends Ryan, we do them quite frequently. I've done one with Lewis not long ago. So it gets endorphins pumping, you feel so much better for it. And yeah, you might ache, the first couple of walks you go on, the first time you play football, you'll hurt the next day, but it's so much worth it. And one of our guys, Dean, as well, he plays for something called Man v Fat. I don't know if that's something that they have down your neck of the woods, James, but it's something where he's found a big release, being a bigger lad like myself, like Lewis, like Joby. We're all big lads. We embrace it, but we love our football. Joby's big into the UFC, and he used to be like Taekwondo champion or something like that. He used to beat people up for fun. I heard.
I'm not
Something
taking
like
that. That is a totally made up accolade, but I have always been.
And I'm not taking that I'm a big lad.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I've seen Lewis last Saturday. He is a big lad now. But
Ethan,
I've
Lewis...
definitely put on the weight.
But the thing is, we all get these releases, and it's just a credit that there are organisations out there. And I just want to sort of go back to the point that if people are struggling, you don't want to speak to GP. You don't want to read the books. You don't want to listen to podcasts. If sport's your way out, find the group, whether it's a kickball in the park with your pals, whether it's Man v Fat, go to the gym, go for a walk. I definitely think that's something that people should be involved in, and you'll feel better for it. Trust us. Money back guarantees, they say.
Is that on everyone who exercises? And if they don't feel better, you will refund everyone.
I will refund them. I will refund them via a high five, a crisp high five. That's what you get.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good.
No, James, it's been really, really eye-opening, James, and I appreciate you sort of having this chat with us. And I'm looking forward to getting my eyes on your book as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
James,
so much.
James, I'd be really interested in, because you have a really cool job, I think, and your job is
Thank
super
you.
impactful in terms of the things you're probably involved in day to day, and it absolutely coincides with your purpose for your book. Do you mind just telling us a little bit about what you actually do in your day job? Because I think, so for example, a lot of us work for a unnamed telecoms business slash technology business, EE, to be fair, and whilst like we all absolutely love our jobs, of course we
Yeah.
do, it doesn't actually necessarily align to our purpose and our cause for this. So I want to get that across, that you aren't just an author who has gone through a personal experience in your own life. You're actually an author who's wrote an incredible book, who actually gets to see the impact of the theories that you've spoken about in your lived experiences with other people struggling too.
Yeah, it's I feel really lucky to be in my job, like, because I'm using my degree and also using the lived experience, and it's something I'm very passionate about.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's quite a mouthful of a title, but it's Senior Wellbeing Access and Marketing Officer. So I update the charity's website and do the social media posts, which I really enjoy, because it's, again, I get to use my writing and be creative with the social media, and for example, and like we make videos as well. I get to go to events, like we have like stalls, like in like, you know, when you get like an event in a park and things like that, and
Yeah.
like and I get to sort of like do a few presentations, like sort of PowerPoint presentations to local community groups, which are really nice as well, because I can kind of talk
Yeah.
about my lived experience a little bit, which kind of helps make it more authentic, I guess. And it's a very varied job, and it's a nice place to be, because like everyone's very passionate about the cause, and like we
Hmm.
champion lived experience as well. Like
Yeah.
some of my colleagues have got their own conditions, and
Mm.
so like we learn from each other, and yeah, the lived experience is really at the heart of what we do. So we try and get the people who use our services, we try and get them involved as well through like feedback panels and focus groups and interviews and stuff. So yeah, it's a really good job. So yeah, I feel very kind of lucky to be doing it, and like it's a sort of job where like I don't get the Sunday blues as well. Like I kind of love what I do, which is, I think it's important, because careers last, I don't know, like 50 years or whatever. So it's like you want to make the most of it, like try and do what you enjoy.
Yeah, it sounds super rewarding, actually. It sounds really rewarding.
Hmm.
Yeah, thank you. It definitely
No,
is.
yeah, it really does. I suppose what would be really interesting for me is when obviously we're talking about mental health, we're talking about men's health, we're talking about the things that we think men should do in order to overcome their challenges, to get the help that they truly need. If you were to summarize the key things that if you came across someone who um, was struggling with mental health, where do you think sort of the key places people can go for help? So is it things like their GP? Should they be speaking to counselors? Like what from, especially from your professional experience as well, what can people do if they're struggling with mental health?
Yeah, so the GP is definitely one option, which is good.
Yeah.
There's other like NHS kind of solutions which aren't the GP, like the NHS kind of trust, like in my location, do like these free webinars where like
Yeah.
you attend subjects like dealing with depression, like managing anxiety, understanding anger, and like all sorts of different topics. And like you can do talking therapies like CBT, which is
Yeah.
cognitive behavioral therapy, which I've done as well,
Hmm.
which was another real like game changer, eye opener for
Yeah.
me. I think everyone should do CBT. I think it's amazing.
I
Um,
agree. I really do.
Yeah, I haven't actually done CBT. I don't think.
Honestly, changed my life. I still use it to this day. And I kind of similar to what you were saying earlier, James, about the medication being sort of your way of learning to sort of live and be lucky enough to find that thing that works for you to be able to sort of live your day-to-day life with not having to worry about sort of having any episodes or anything. CBT I have once a week, and I have for years and years and years, and it almost has become my medication, if that makes sense. Just that
Yeah.
release of being able to speak to someone and being able to evaluate sort of what my counselor does with myself. And I don't want to go too deep into it, but basically things like probabilities versus reality, and having that way of kind of training your brain to understand your mental health more. And I think talking about it does that as well. Having friends who you can talk to, having, like you said, a support network in your life is great, but having a professional who can break it down to you on a personal level, because as you said earlier, everyone's different, and having someone to be able to make it personal for yourself really was the biggest difference for me. And I go back to what I said earlier about my biggest fear was not being normal. And CBT kind of showed me, look, you're not the only person. This is normal. It's not.
We
It's
are our
not.
own normal, aren't we?
Yeah, it's not. It's okay to not be okay. You know, that's the biggest thing I took from it. So I think CBT is something that everyone should try for sure.
Definitely, yeah. I always say I'd rather be like weird than normal, because normal's like boring, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
gotta
it's
be
very
like
true.
unique and quirky and stuff. But yeah, it reframes what I was thinking. Like, so half my sessions, I think I cried at some point, which like it was good to
Yeah,
normalize that, just to be able to
for sure.
cry as a man. But yeah, it made me realize I was trying to like deal with stress and uncertainty by like avoiding it all the time, and it made me realize that actually if I kind of learn to cope with it more, instead of like trying to run away from it, that was like better in the long term.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like because I used to be very self critic as well. I used to be very harsh on myself, and it was like kind of figuring out how can I be more like self compassionate. So it's, you learn so much in it, like, and it stays with you. So it's so worth
Yeah,
doing.
that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it really, really is. James, it has been an absolute pleasure. I think Ethan
Likewise.
has one more question. So this is the final part of our podcast that Ethan likes to do with every single guest and us occasionally. No pressure here, but Ethan will remember this full interview based on what you reply here. So no pressure.
Exactly. So what we tend, I know we've covered it a little bit during the interview, but what we tend to ask our guests is sections called "See No Evil, Hear No Evil." It's a film from the 1980s or 1990s, I believe. But basically, what we ask is that our guests give us a book or podcast that has defined their journey so far. Whether that's obviously the books that you read earlier on, which I know you've mentioned, you can repeat them, or something that you've come to light recently. Could even be your own book. Yeah,
Could be your book.
Your book.
It's
So
definitely your book.
James,
It's definitely your book, James.
James, if you wanna tell the audience about a certain book or podcast, that
I
is
feel
defined
bad
you.
like these my own book. It feels like that should be like I
You're
can't
not
do
allowed
that
to do
one.
that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll let you. Don't worry, James. We'll allow it this time.
Do you want me to say where it's like available and stuff? Like,
Oh, I'd
not
love
sure.
that.
Go for,
I'd love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Go for
Yeah.
that.
But
It's
what is the book again? Sorry. So what is the book and why should people read it again and where can they buy
Yeah.
it? Would be the questions.
That sounds good. It's called Befriending My Brain, and
Yeah.
it's a mental illness memoir, which I think it has the potential to help anyone who reads it, regardless of whether they're going through a mental health condition themselves or not, you'll get something out of it. And it's on Amazon in paperback form or ebook, so like Kindle. And it's also on the Waterstones website. And I'm currently doing the audiobook version of it.
I
So I'm
was
like,
just gonna say, any chance of an audiobook?
that'll be, I don't know when, like later this year it'll be out, but it's my friends helping me do it, and it's very challenging to say the least, trying to record an audio
Yeah.
book.
Are you self-narrating it?
I am, yeah.
I
Apart from
love that.
the bits so there's like chats with other people in the book.
Yeah.
So like 2 out of 3 of them are voicing themselves, and then my friend who's helping me do the recording and stuff, he's done all the doctor's notes
Oh, I love that.
in the book. So yeah, he's almost like voice of the doctors, and yeah.
Well, I want a copy of that, so you'll have to email us or something when it comes out in audiobook. Because I'm not going to lie to you, I am terrible at reading books. I am. My brain just goes everywhere. I just have the attention span of a gerbil for most times. So it doesn't matter how good the book is, how much I love the person. I really find it hard to read books, but audiobooks I listen to every night. Absolutely every night.
Yeah,
so I would absolutely love a copy of that.
Yeah.
definitely send it.
Amazing.
Top man. And if you want to add something towards the end of it about a certain podcast with two okay with two okay looking men and one really handsome man with great hair, you can do that as well if you want, James.
I don't have any hair, mate. I don't have any hair.
He was talking about me, Lewis. It's been the
To be fair, right? There's 3 of us that have lost our hair. Job's just in denial because he's got a cap on.
No.
That's the thing.
There's a full. Honestly, if I took this off, James, you would see like, do you know Jason Momoa? You would see luscious locks just drop down, and that's all you need to know. That's all.
To be fair, I thought it was Jason Momoa on my top right screen when I first came on. I haven't seen you for that long.
To be fair, a lot of people do mistake us for him, so I understand why, Ethan.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's an awkward one to end on there, Joe.
But no, James, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I know I've personally learned a lot, and I'm imagining my co-hosts here probably have learned a lot as well.
Yeah, what I would say, James, I find you incredibly inspirational. What you've done by writing a book and speaking out has been nothing short of brave. And yeah, one, I've already ordered the book, and I'm super excited to read it. And just keep doing what you're doing. I'm sure we will probably have you on as a guest in the future again to hear about how well the book's going. And as we delve further and more into some of the topics that we're talking about, you're a huge credit to men who have survived a mental illness. And I actively encourage anyone who is either struggling with mental health or is in a relationship or knows someone who is to buy James's book, because it sounds like it's going to be something that will massively help you on the journey that you're on.
Thank you so much. I want to say the same to you as well in terms of keep doing what you're doing. Like, this is an amazing podcast, so it's so nice to be part of it, and I look forward to listening to the future episodes.
Well,
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. It was lovely
Top
having
man,
you,
James.
James.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, guys, we just had James on the podcast there. That was a really, really incredible episode where James absolutely opened up about his own experience, and I thought it was really brave of him.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, he's
Excellent
a brave guy,
guest.
to be
Absolutely
fair. Yeah. He's gone through the mill, like, to be fair to him. Like, he's not shy to open up, which is, you don't really see that these days, but the sort of guests we want on, really, people who we can learn from. And, you know, the fact that he's come out the other end and wrote a book, you know, to help others, it's putting into format what we want to do, you know, help everyone else. Really good guy. Yeah, it was also nice of you, Lewis, to bring on your twin brother as well on the podcast. If anyone's
be
watching, it's Lewis. I couldn't tell he's apart half the time.
To be fair, if Job took his cap off, right, if Job
Jason
took his
Momoa,
cap off,
Jason Momoa, you've heard it. You've heard
if
it.
Jason Momoa took his cap off
Yeah.
and stopped being in denial about the fact he'd lost his hair, and I can't wait until we have an episode where we bring someone in to talk about hair loss, and I definitely have a guest lined up.
I'm gone.
No, you're going to have to come on it. Not all of us have the locks of Ethan Rowan.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
I do
true.
have wicked hair. It's the only thing I've got going for it is my hair, though. As Richie Anderson politely tells us every time I see him.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
true.
God.
It is probably the only thing you
Yeah.
have going for you, and that's
But,
someone who's known you for 12 years.
That's brilliant. I like that. By the way, the guest James, what a guy.
Yeah.
I'm a bit gutted I didn't get a chance to really speak to him either. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
I didn't get a word in for half an hour.
I was
For the first
interested.
half.
I
for the
was
first half,
interested.
Well, the first half felt like Job had just met his new best friend, which was great, and I think it really did help the conversation flow, except that it was only flowing one way.
My way.
Yeah, the Job way.
Job way.
That's definitely something we can work on in time. I want to give James the credit here, though. We've had a good bit of a laugh there. James had a really powerful message, right? I think what was really key to what James said is, if you're struggling, was the message I got from it, that you have to speak up. So he mentioned around a problem shared is a problem halved. Ethan, I believe he may have got that with the Ethan Rowan quote book from one of our early episodes.
100%.
It's something that I know you're super passionate about, and you've helped me through some of my my struggles in the past, and it's something you've always said to me. What was the things that stuck in your heads the most, boys, from the podcast tonight?
Well, I'll let Ethan speak first, since he is crying about how much he spoke today.
Yeah. I was going to say it's a first that you're letting someone else speak, Joe. Thank you. Appreciate it. First time tonight. No, yeah, I think it's a different kind of mental health battle that I've not really experienced. So obviously,
me neither.
It's something where he's had to have help done by other people, you know, and it's been bad for me and it's been bad for us guys. But I'll never say I know I've had really dark thoughts, Job. I know you've mentioned it as well, but we've never got to the point where we've had to be forcibly, potentially, I say committed, but that's probably what the scenario was. It sounds like a harsh term,
he said
but that's why he was at. And
yeah, James did
to
say
hear that, he did, and credit to him to do that, you know. And to be honest, I think it's something we've not dealt with. And to see that spectrum and then know the fact that he's come out and then he's an author, he's wrote it down. For me, that just showed character, and you know, it gives hope to anyone who's having those sort of thoughts. So, you know, credit to James on that side of things for sure. What about you, Joby? I know you're dying to talk now.
I've been itching, literally. No, for sure. Honestly, what a guy! What an absolute guy! I think what I took from it most as well is the fact that he has learned to live with it after such a hard experience. You know, there's a sense of relief to know that someone's been through something. I know it's not the same as what we've been through, or what the same of what many others might have been through, but it has its relatability in the sense of, you know, going through a mental battle, going through a psychosis, being sectioned, all that kind of stuff. There is ways to deal with it, and there is ways to continue your life and live your life going forward. And I think that's a powerful message from me, especially. I've felt as though it's a little bit extra reassurance to know that I'm going to be okay. Yeah. And I think a lot of people will probably get that as well. So what a guy. What a guy. Lou?
Yeah. Yeah, just to finish on that point, I think it's super inspirational, and it's something that I'm hoping we get week on week, whether we're talking to survivors, we're talking to doctors, we're talking to speakers, experts, athletes, whoever, that no matter what you're going through in life, in my head, the worst thing you can do is take your own life. Men are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than women.
Yeah.
And that is a huge underlying problem for men. Heading into next week's episode, we are going to be speaking to an expert in all things suicide. And James's story tonight has proven to me that no matter how bad life gets, take action, speak up, find help. Don't do something that you might not be here to regret.
Yeah. And that's
Exactly.
a powerful message.
I will end this podcast now because it's a Monday. The Last of Us is out. I don't know why we
Yeah.
do it on a Monday when The Last of Us is streaming. But I hope everyone has a great week. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Everyman podcast. Tune in next week. We'll have more weird guests and we'll have more weird banter. You take care. Stay classy, San Diego.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Love that.